Hey guys, it's Jamie from Not So Wimpy Teacher. I have a bit of a confession to make. I removed grammar from my writing workshop time. Now, when I tell you that, some of you are thinking, but Jamie, that's crazy, right? We need to be teaching grammar during writing workshop. We need to be teaching capitalization, punctuation, parts of speech, writing sentences, and how to write a paragraph because grammar go hand in hand, right? I'm not going to argue with you there because grammar and writing do go hand in hand. So you're probably wondering, why would you remove grammar from your writing workshop if you know that they go hand in hand? Well, I am here today to tell you exactly why I took grammar out of my writing workshop time, okay? I have a few reasons for you. Number one, I removed grammar from my writing workshop time because my students need a dedicated grammar lesson. When it was part of my writing time, they weren't getting what they needed. Okay, guys, like nouns and verbs and adjectives and plural nouns and possessive nouns and conjunctions. I mean, holy cow, grammar is hard. And then combine it with all these crazy rules, right? So you've got an adverb, it's modifying the verb. And sometimes they aren't acting as an adverb because they don't have an object. And in that case, they're actually a preposition. Seriously? This stuff is hard. Grammar is hard. The only way that my students stood a chance at mastering all of the language and grammar standards was if they had a dedicated lesson that took this huge standard and broke it down into the tiniest little chunks. My students needed to spend an entire week identifying nouns, and they needed to have another entire week on regular plural nouns, and then another week on irregular plural nouns. We needed to take all of this grammar and break it down into tiny pieces. Otherwise, there's no way they could remember all of the rules. And I would just find myself reteaching it over and over and over and over again, right? It's the end of the year and I'm still going, what is a noun, guys? You know what nouns are. Anyone else have that happen? I hope I'm not alone. But my students weren't remembering all these parts of speech until I took it and I broke it down into the tiniest chunks. Identifying the nouns in their writing really could only happen after I had taught these targeted grammar mini lessons. So their writing would improve as they learn more grammar, but only if I took dedicated time to teach grammar. Then later on in the year, I start seeing the benefits in their writing. If I tried to squeeze the grammar skills into my writing workshop, then I actually would end up with more confusion and frustration and less mastery. Confusion and frustration on my part, confusion and frustration from my students. Let me talk about it in terms of math, okay? It would be like if you were teaching multiplication before you had ever taught addition. And you just assumed, well, my students will learn addition because we'll be doing repeated addition strategies of multiplication. So that's how they'll learn it. So if you are just teaching writing workshop, asking them to write essays, and you're like, well, they'll learn grammar by writing. It's like you're not actually giving them those steps in the beginning. If you ask them to add before they multiply, it's tricky. If you ask them to use quality grammar in writing before you've given them the chance to break it down into tiny chunks, you tend to have less mastery and more reteach over and over throughout the year. And so I dedicated 10 minutes per day to just grammar. It was 10 minutes prior to my writing workshop, and we only did grammar during that time. We weren't writing essays. We were just focusing on the parts of speech, punctuation, capitalization, dictionary skills, all those language standards. I kept it engaging. I mean, it was only 10 minutes, but I kept it engaging by using things like task cards, doing task card scoots. And I'll leave a link for you to be able to check out my grammar routine. But I did make it a separate time. I pulled it out of the writing workshop so that my students would actually learn grammar and remember the rules and the strategies I was teaching them for grammar. When it was just mixed in with writing, it was confusing to them. They weren't targeting one skill. All right. So by taking grammar out of my writing workshop, my students improved their grammar and language skills, and that's huge. Number 2 reason that I removed grammar from my writing workshop is that there is so much more to writing than just grammar. So I started some amazing Facebook groups, and I sometimes will ask them, what are you teaching in writing this week? And the most common answer is that they're teaching how to write a sentence or how to write a paragraph. And they're talking about the mechanics of writing a sentence and the mechanics of writing a paragraph. And I get it. I totally get it. Students are still forgetting capital letters and punctuation. They struggle to include a complete thought, or they have so many thoughts and it's just this big run-on sentence. I get it. The struggle is super real for us, but there is more to teaching writing than mechanics. And so if the majority of our mini lessons are mechanics, we're missing out on so much that we could be adding to our students' writing. I want my students to learn about writing small moments, leads, citing evidence, writing strong opinion statements. I want them to have an ending. I want them to have transition words that help me through. I want them to show, don't tell. So many amazing writing strategies that I want to teach my students. So I want you to take a look at your writing rubric. I really want you to grab your writing rubric and look it over. Highlight any of the categories on the rubric that have to do with mechanics. That's spelling, capitalization, punctuation, the mechanics. I did this, and I was a little surprised to find out that it was about 20% of my rubric that had to do with mechanics. But as a teacher, I was spending probably 75% of my time focused on spelling, punctuation, even handwriting. But my rubric didn't dictate that I spend that much time on the mechanics. In fact, if I was looking at my rubric and even my standards, about 80% of my time should be spent on content strategies and 20% or less on mechanic strategies. Whoa, that was definitely not what I was doing. I was sitting there circling words they were spelling wrong and asking them to make sure they capitalize every sentence and had punctuation. And this was the main thing we talked about during our writing workshop until I had that aha moment of looking at my rubric and saying, if all I do is spend this time on mechanics, I'm helping them become 20% better at writing. But if I start helping them to develop characters, if I start showing them how to use descriptive words and better introductions and conclusions that hook and wrap up our writing, I'm going to help them to improve their writing by about 80%. When you look at it that way, you realize that you cannot spend as many of your writing mini lessons as you have been doing grammar. It was an aha moment for me, and I hope that it is for you too. Grammar makes writing better. It does. When a student has great grammar, their writing is better. But if we spend a huge chunk of our time only on those mechanics, it's going to eat up the time that we need to teach writing content. That's what we ought to be teaching during our writing workshop time. Okay? And number 3 reason that I took my grammar lessons, for the most part, out of my writing workshop is that I want to grow a love for writing with my students. I know lots of you talk about growing a love for reading with your students, but what about growing that love for writing? What about showing our students that writing is fun? That writing is the way to share their story. Writing is a way to discover things that they're interested in. Writing is a way to be an expert. Writing is a way to share feelings. Writing is communication. I want them to love writing workshop. If for some reason we can't do writing workshop one day, I want them to moan and groan. And when I say it's time for writing workshop, I want them to perk up. And it's possible. If you're sitting there thinking, ooh, really, Jamie? I don't think they can be excited about writing workshop. It is possible. But the thing is, when I started teaching writing, I probably only had 1 or 2 students who liked writing. And I don't even know why they liked writing, because I made writing pretty terrible in my classroom. So it's amazing that they still liked writing. They must have had a phenomenal teacher the year before that taught them to love writing, because they love writing despite the fact that I was ruining it. But the rest of my class, they were like, ugh, staring at the clock. Is this over? And I'm here to tell you, friends, it does not have to be this way. We can and we should be helping our students to learn to love to write, okay? And the good news is it's not actually all that hard, okay? In elementary school, it's not that hard to make writing fun. And when writing is fun, our students will love it. I am here to tell you, things that make writing fun, let them choose where in the classroom they're going to write. It can be standing, sitting, at a table, at a desk, on the floor with a clipboard. Where do they want to write? What do they want to write with? Let them choose a utensil. Maybe it's a fun gel pen. Maybe it's a mechanical pencil. Maybe it is one of those cool color pencils that writes in 2 colors. Maybe it is just a standard number 2 pencil. Let them pick though, because that makes it more fun. And writing is super fun when you get to choose your own topic rather than being assigned a topic. When you get to write about the things that interest you and excite you, that makes writing so much more enjoyable, and students will look forward to that. So making writing fun, not all that complicated, but I'm here to tell you that a worksheet with sentences that have mistakes and the student being told fix the sentences is never going to be fun. Or maybe even just giving them a bunch of sentences and saying, label all the parts of speech in these sentences. That is never going to make them think writing is fun. Okay? I want my students to think, whoa, I can't wait to write. And so I am spending my writing workshop time allowing them to write, to tell their stories, rather than doing worksheets and projects. That is why I cannot be doing grammar during that time, because then I'm pulling the time that they should be spending writing their story away from them. So instead, I dedicated 10 minutes per day to do grammar. It's quick. We're not spending a half an hour because I don't want them dreading it. Just a really quick lesson on Monday. We do some writing with it. We do some task card scoot. We assess at the end of the week, but it's just 10 minutes a day. And then I spend 30 to 45 minutes every single day doing a writing workshop where students are focused on content. As the year progresses, we're able to see how learning grammar during that 10 minutes prior to writing is helping them in the writing workshop. But it is not ever going to be the primary focus of our writing workshop. So I'm curious, what do you think? Could you pull your grammar lessons out of your writing workshop? What could you do to help your students to learn more about content strategies in writing workshop and help them to see that writing is fun while still putting aside a little bit of time to work on all those crazy grammar rules? I'm super curious to hear what you think. So make sure you let me know and check out the links. I'm going to share with you my grammar routine as well as a guide for what I taught during my writing mini lessons. If you're like, if I'm not teaching grammar, what will I teach, Jamie? I went ahead and made you a guide. So make sure you check out that link too. All right, guys, have a not so wimpy week.